Hi, everyone. We're just opening the doors here to let everybody in, and we will begin this webinar at the top of the hour. I'm just letting everybody in. And thank you for joining us on this snowy day in November. Welcome to Wisconsin, what state we live in. Okay, we're going to begin our webinar. So good morning and welcome to Care of Local History Collections follow-up webinar. I am Laurie Freund, coordinator of the SUI Southeastern Wisconsin region, which includes the following public library systems: Arrowhead, Bridges, Kenosha County, Lake Shores, Milwaukee County, and Monarch Library Systems. This webinar will be recorded and made available on the SUI Library website. In fact, it'll be part of the collection of videos found on the SUI webpage on Care of Local History Collections. I'll share that link to that page in chat. So we did something a little different this time. We made 6 recordings on basic topics related to the creating, carrying, handling, and preserving of various types of historical artifacts that libraries have in their local history collections. And they were made available for everybody to view. Slides were also available to view and download. All of those were presented by Milwaukee Public Library archivists, Robert Yeager and Cassandra Lappert. Bob and Casey are now back to answer questions you still have. They will answer the questions that were submitted in advance by the registrants, as well as those that you have right now. So please put your questions in the Q&A box. You can find that Q&A icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Click on that, and then you can submit your questions. So let's begin. Take it away, Bob and Casey.
Hi, so my name is Casey, and I'm the processing archivist here at Milwaukee Public Library. And
I'm Bob Yeager, the manager of archives and special collections at Milwaukee Public Library.
I just want to say right off the top, rather than trying to give you our abbreviated email names, if you have any questions and you want to ask us directly, you can email us at MPL, which stands for Milwaukee Public Library, mplRchives@milwaukee.gov. It's just an easier email to remember. But if you have questions or follow up or some, looking for an answer on something, feel free. Both Bob and I are on that email, and so we check it all the time. So I'm just going to start reading through some of the questions that were submitted ahead of time. And we kind of grouped them together because some of them were very similar, and we'll just talk a little bit about them. And if you have questions, like Lori said, feel free to pop them in the question and answer box. We'll keep an eye on that also. So one of the first questions we had where they talked about, a couple people asked if there are grants available to scan the local history books. There are several places that you can apply for grants to scan your local history materials. There's the NHPRC. There's a couple spots. Bob, you want to put those? Can you put those links in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that now.
So you can click through and see them. I can't remember what NHPRC stands for, National Do you see it, Bob? I don't know. I can't remember what it stands for, but I'm familiar, you know, I've
Yeah.
heard of, you know, we've had some of those grants before. So those are places. Recollection Wisconsin, which we mentioned in one of the videos, is a place that wants to partner with you to do digitization projects. There's the NEDAC, which is also an acronym that I don't remember, but Northeastern
Northeastern
Document.
Document Conservation. Yeah.
And they have a whole list of resources of places you can digitize. So really with a little bit of sleuthing online, you can find places, and that's not a definitive list at all. So so the next one, I'd like to know more about engaging the public with a local history collection. And this is something we're working at. We didn't always have a specific special collections department, and that really just started in the last year or so. We were working on these collections, but we were under other subject departments. So we are kind of focusing on that as a department now to be able to engage in not just local history, but our special collections and archives collections, which revolve around local history. We are working on programming. I've done a little bit of programming in the past, something, you know, even like this program series. We have a specific social media account. We have an Instagram account that is just dedicated to special collections materials. And it's got some good traction, and it's growing, and the person who runs it, I'm kind of the backup, but I'm kind of out of the loop because I have a lot of other things to do. But she solicits information from us, and she's really great because she's always like, just give me some pictures, a little bit of info, and I'll write something up. And she does rare books, she does our different archive collections. So that's a really good way to engage with people. I mean, we have a whole social media team, and then sometimes our other social media accounts will repost that stuff. But just a simple, you know, Instagram account that just talks about how to access some materials and some pictures can really get people's attention. I know that we've joined a couple of Facebook groups that focus on Milwaukee history, and so then some of those posts, we put that information in that group, because those people are very interesting. You put a picture up and you'll be like, guess what this address is? I think the County Historical Society does that. They'll put a picture of like an old house somewhere and they'll be like, anyone know where this is from? And everyone will try to guess the address. But also, you know, that's a lot of social media, but that takes it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's much more time consuming than it seems. And the other place is just start displaying some of your materials, visual materials like signs or posters, ephemera kind of stuff, buttons, ribbons. People really get a kick out of that, especially if they remember the event that the button or the pin or the poster represents. You can do displays on that, and sometimes that can be a good starting point. And then just coming with programming. I mean, just focus on an event or focus on something in your collection you want to highlight. You can be creative. We had a geocache program we put together based on the Milwaukee Socialists, because we have a big socialist collection here. And it was a learning. I wouldn't say it was the best, but it was it was a learning experience. Geocachers are very intense. They're a very intense group. But we did get some good feedback, and people, you know, found our geocaches, and we had some issues. And if anyone wants to know about starting a geocache, I can give some ideas, but I'm by no means an expert. So you can get creative, and going to conferences and hearing about what other people have done is a good way to kind of learn more and get ideas too. Because the geocache idea came from Bob went to a conference and went to a session on a geocache, and I'd never thought about geocaches before. And so during the pandemic, when we were all staying home, you know, we came up with some spots and scoped them out and kind of created it. So let's see, the next one. What are the best tools to use when handling older materials? We covered a lot of that in a lot of the videos. I would go back to some of the videos maybe that apply to the specific type of material you're talking about. Cool, dry, dark is always great for a lot of older materials. Of course, it's not always feasible because you want them out on display. But I would go back and watch some of the videos, just maybe focus on one that applies to the specific type of material you're asking about. How do you catalog old items without labels and stamps? You can encapsulate items, and we talked about that in one of the videos about encapsulation, and that can be anything from the Mylar that you cut down and kind of custom, or plastic, polypropylene, just the sheet protectors that are archival safe. You can use that. The other thing we do is you don't want to you don't want to put stickers and labels and barcodes all over books. You can get you can buy them, or you could make them, some acid-free folders, or you can buy them already cut into slivers, and I don't have any here next to me. And then you put your stickers and all your labels on the insert, and you put that in the book. We have a huge collection of volumes that Bob did that. He went through all of them and order. Did you cut them down, or did you order them?
I started cutting them, and then it became tedious, and I found where I could order.
But it was a lot. It wasn't just like 10 or 20. It's a lot.
Yeah.
We had a wall of volumes, and so he cut those down and put the labels, the stickers, or hand wrote, and then put them in each one. So because sometimes your local history collection might not get the open browsing, if you've got a special room or a place, you don't have to worry about as much, I think, like things falling out, like if your regular circulating items that get much more use. We actually have, for some fragile items, we have a bookmark that says, no photocopying, on the tab, so that people, like old city directory said, if you started opening them up and setting them down on the photocopier, it would just deteriorate them faster. So we use bookmarks for that too, just to indicate, handle with care, or stuff like that. So, and if you flag that, some people will be more conscious about it. I mean, you always have someone who doesn't, but they'll be like, oh, this is old, this is special. So they'll be a little more careful with it. Let's see. Oh, wait, a couple more. We have a list, so sorry. And of course, if you have to write on the item itself, because you can do that. Sometimes I'll do that. You write it in pencil lightly on the back, because sometimes bookmarks do get, separated from their item. And if you write just lightly in pencil in the cover, at least sometimes for archival collections, I'll just write the collection number, or for items we bring up from our basement storage, sometimes we just write the location that it came from, the tiers, so we know which storage location without looking it up, so we sort it to be reshelved. Because pencil, you can erase pencil, and I know that there are like erasable pens out there, but I would really stay away from the pens. Ink, pencil is just your safest bet. Let's see. So how to best care for vertical file you inherited. In my previous job, I had a mammoth vertical file that I kind of inherited caring for, and it was a little bit nuts at first. So a couple of notes we have here is, you can encapsulate items that are really fragile or coming apart. Typically, vertical files are often more about the information in the documents, and not necessarily the documents themselves. However, that's not absolute. So you can photocopy stuff. If something's in really terrible shape, you've got a clipping that's just coming apart, or then you could put that in a sleeve. And if you encapsulate stuff, I do want to say, do not if you put stickers on it, then, because you can put stickers on the encapsulation, don't block any important images or information on the item. And we've struggled with that here, because we're such a big institution that sometimes people don't think about it. The people who sometimes catalog this stuff they're just putting stickers on. That's just their job. That's how they do it. They have to do so many. And, we get out a big giant map that we've encapsulated, and there's stickers and labels all over where some of the information is on the bottom. And so we're like, oh, why did you do that? But then they're just doing their job and they're not thinking about it. So, don't put your stickers over information somebody might want to read, an image or anything like that. But vertical files, so use acid-free folders, plastic sleeves for brittle materials. If you have any photos in there, because I know the vertical file I inherited at a previous institution had all kinds of stuff that nobody knew what to do with. You know, encapsulate the photo or put it in a photo sleeve. I actually made a change when I was doing it to use like catalog subject headings for folder headings, because they were kind of all over the place. So I was trying to do some more standardized type of language. So even if you just look it up in your library catalog and see what kind of terms you use for a certain subject, or you can go to the Library of Congress subject headings and look that up, but just more standardized language that more people will think to use, I think is helpful. Of course, if you have a vertical file, you want to make an inventory of it. If you've got something that has a lot of folders under a particular subject, I would indicate how many folders that is. I know we have a clippings file, and it's kind of my pet peeve that I go down there to what looks like one folder and it's like 6 folders. And I should have brought a cart down to get it. But our clippings file is mammoth, so it's not something easily changed. But you know, it's good to, if you've got something, you have the time to fix it that way, and so people know how much is there. So if somebody wants to see a vertical file and there's only 2 documents, it's 1 folder as opposed to 10 folders. I mean, that's a different amount of time people might want to spend to look at it. And if you're going to continue adding to the vertical file, I would define your parameters. What are you adding? Everything and anything, or you know, are you narrowing it to a specific subject? Or if you just don't want to add anymore, you know, you can do that, but I would be consistent about it, because it can take up a lot of time for just kind of turn into just a big clippings file, which if that's what you want, that's great, but you know, there may be other places you need to spend your time. So let's see. Our next question is, how does one go about adding books to the local history collection beyond obtaining yearbooks? Yearbooks are not the only kind of publication you can add to a local history collection. In one of the first videos, we had a huge list. So I would go back and take a look at that. You know, local magazines, newsletters from local organizations. Ask around, get a subscription to something that maybe you think nobody's collecting. Trying to think, let's see, pick up free publications. I know we get the Shepherd Express around here, and while it's kind of a free publication, I know they do save copies of it. If you have some kind of little newsletter, you may want to do that for an organization that's been around for a long time. Find local interest groups. Even if it's just online, if they don't send out a paper, but you could print the newsletter off online and keep that someplace, put it in a folder, and then you're keeping. It just depends. I mean, you can be creative about it, and it doesn't have to be difficult. You know, you don't have to come up with anything elaborate or super expensive. You're just trying to collect history about, you know, what your community and your community, people in your community, events in your community. If you have local history buffs in your community, those are great people to tap. We're very lucky John Gerda is here, you know, in this area, and he's been on the library board and he's very involved. And so he points us in directions and recommends things and uses so we always have him to ask questions about things. And like I mentioned, the Facebook group earlier, if you have a local history Facebook group of some sort, you know, you don't even have to post anything, just join if you've got a Facebook account and lurk and see what people are talking about, the kind of things people are interested in. So, you know, we just connected with a group, Wisconsin Geological Society, I can't remember. But it turns out their group started here in the museum as a function of the museum, actually. So we've just recently connected with them, and I said we'd be happy to be a repository for your, you know, and if you have any materials, you know, for your organization. And it might not be a lot, it might just be a box. I mean, and that's fine, but you know, that's a good way to partner with those local organizations. And then that's how you can build that kind of local history collection also, just through networking. And I'm not a great networker, so don't think you know, I'm a big introvert. I know Bob's an introvert. You know, a lot of librarians are, but sometimes you get in the right subject and you can be very chatty, you know, and very interested. And, you know, if you're interested in local history or you have friends who are, you know, let them help you network. It doesn't have to be difficult. So let's go down to the next one. See, what are general weeding criteria? Just like any other collection, this is going to vary. If you're new to your community, you may need some research or ask coworkers about local events, locations, leaders. I'm not from the Milwaukee area. I'm from out of state originally. I have family here. I've had it for a long time. So I wasn't aware of Milwaukee's strong socialist connection until I got here. So you just have to ask questions and you do reading. I have a giant book about socialism, and there's a huge section on, you know, Milwaukee and Wisconsin in general. And well, I didn't read the whole thing. It's really big. But I read parts of it and I educated myself, and you pay attention, and then you have to pay attention to just things happening overall in the nation. I mean, you know, your state, your community is part of a bigger family of things happening too. So it's, if you're an active part of your community, and you know, just pay attention and then collect those kind of things. Are you probably going to forget something? Probably, but I mean, it's just you just run the risk of doing that. It's just, you know, we can't remember everything. But we can collect as much as we can. And then sometimes you do have to make decisions about what materials are the most important, because you can't keep everything either. So we have the City of Milwaukee Archives, and so I go every month down and screen or weed materials that are marked to potentially come to us for our City of Milwaukee Archives collection. And there are subjects that I look for, things I have in mind that would be important. Have I probably missed something? Probably, but I think I do a pretty good job. I don't have a ton of time to spend, you know, hours and hours doing this. So I'm trying to make relatively quick decisions on a lot of material that would be most valuable to our patrons. Just knowing what people ask for and what people research. It takes a while. It took me a while to really get a feel for it. So, you know, just like you collect for your regular library collections, it takes a while. You have to do some research and pay attention to things, and that's. Do you have any ideas on that, Bob? Because Bob's not from Milwaukee either.
Yeah.
So
I know it's tough. It's like you said, you have to know your community and know what you think is going to be important in 10, 20, 50 years, which is hard to do, but you just have to try to think of what was the big topic, what's something big that was going on now. So if you wanted to keep something on the pandemic, you know, that's kind of stuff, you know, people ask us, oh, what do you have on the Spanish flu from 100 years ago? Well, we have very little, no one saved anything from that then. So now we kind of have the hindsight to say, well, we want to save this stuff now. So yeah, it's not an easy yes or no definite, but I think you kind of get a feel for what's going on now, and what's important now will probably be important in the future.
Let's see, let's move on to the next one. How many copies of local histories should we keep? You know, you can always shoot for 2 if you can get 1 and a spare. If it's an older item and you've got 2 spares, that's not a terrible thing to keep. Do you need 25? Probably not, unless it's just something you think will get a ton of use. Our city directories get tons of use, and so we do keep all the copies we can of those. But it's all about the space you have too, because, you know, if you keep 10 copies of something and really only 2 or 3 get used, what else are you not able to keep because those 10 copies? So it does, just like we talked about the weeding, you know, it takes some judgment. You want space for a variety of things and not just every copy of everything, because nobody has an infinite amount of space. I mean, we have 4 basements in this building and we still run out of space. You can't keep everything. So just like with your library collections, you have to make judgments about things. And I always try to go for, you know, what people are most interested in researching, what might be, and like the pandemic, right away, I was like, we got to keep stuff. We have to make a folder. We have to start, we identified like the two things about the 1918 pandemic we had, and it's like two signs about covering your nose when you cough or sneeze. And, so we didn't, because in some years, kids are going to be asking to write papers. They're going to be told to research about the COVID pandemic. So you do have to kind of think like a historian a little bit of what kind of events, might be important to note. And let's see, the last question in this section, we have kind of a general section, then we have some more specific areas. How to collect today's history for future researchers, which we've kind of been talking about. It's really kind of subjective. You just focus on getting to know your community and the different kinds of voices. And is there some kind of voice that's not represented? Because your own personal biases and spheres of influence, or people you network with, that can influence that. So if there's, because nobody can know everything about everybody. So try to think outside of your comfort zone too, like what voices aren't represented, what experiences aren't, and that might be something important to look. And in some ways, and some of those minority voices may not have a lot of stuff. So you can only collect what's available. So you just have to keep that in mind, and just like with library collections, you want to try to collect a diverse group of voices, perspectives, events, that kind of thing. So the next section we're going to talk about a little is, some people had some questions about digitization. Do you want me to keep going, Bob, or do you want to?
Yeah, I
don't want to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. Yeah,
I talk a lot between the two of me, so two of us. So
we did have a few things on digitization, and probably like I don't even think it was that long ago, like 6 months ago, just got a digital projects librarian. So we're just starting to get more focused on that. Not that we already have digital collections going, but now we have someone dedicated to it. And in this section, probably what I'm going to do a lot, and it's in the chat, the link is to Recollection Wisconsin. They really are set up. They really want to help libraries in Wisconsin with their digital projects. So they have a lot of resources on it. They will be offering to help too if you reach out with whatever you need. So I'm going to probably say that link a lot. So the first thing, someone asked if they're interested about optical character recognition, which is where you scan a document and it'll write the text out of it. I know that there's a lot of software out there, and I know it's much improved than when it first came out, but I don't have any personal recommendations. That's something, again, I would talk to Recollection Wisconsin and see what they recommend, because they probably would know what the best software is out there for it. So how to store old newspapers and whether to keep them after you digitize them. So yeah, digitization saves the information in deteriorated materials, but in some cases, the format information is presented in can be just as valuable in its own right. So yeah, ideally, you would want to save the newspaper after you digitize it, unless it is just absolutely crumbling and then it's just not worth saving.
We just had a big discussion about newspapers here, because while newspapers are not really considered they're not part of really archives and special collections. We have newspapers in our archive collection, but this institution has a huge amount of newspapers that live in our basement storage, and we don't really handle them. And we've talked about access, and we have them on microfilm, a lot of them, not all of them. And so really it's the periodicals department and a lot of our circulation staff that work with them. And in the past, they've actually been wrapped in brown paper, which is terrible. it's like grocery bag paper. I mean, that's acidic paper on acidic paper. So it just causes them to deteriorate faster. But I mean, people just didn't know, and this was done years and years ago, and they were just trying to keep them together because not all of them are bound. We used to have a bindery, so some did get bound together, but there's a lot that didn't, and that's the only thing kind of holding them together. So nobody really, it's something we're working on, but and it's been a conversation for at least 5 years now that I think I've been involved in the conversation. So it's not an easy, it's not a quick fix unless you have a very small number, but newspapers are usually plentiful. So if you can digitize them, great.
And that's another thing to plug Recollection Wisconsin is they are actively working to digitize smaller newspapers from throughout the state. So if you have a run of newspapers that you want to get digitized, check with Recollection Wisconsin and see what resources they can offer you.
Especially like that's where you can really find, some of those little tiny local papers can represent a voice that or a perspective that it's not the main paper that you don't have anywhere else. So it can be very important to save that. We have a lot of ethnic papers here. We have like little neighborhood newspapers. So that's another great place to look to add to your local history collection. And sometimes you just run into people who have been hoarding them in a basement somewhere, and God bless the hoarders for us. I mean, that's where we've been able to keep a lot of our collections, but the flip side is that you've got to organize it so people have access to it. So, just that you have to, we can't stress enough to talk to Recollection Wisconsin to work on some of that.
Another question was the digitization of microfilm of newspapers in the local history collection, which can certainly be done, but you probably would have to seek a local or outside vendor to do that service. But it's definitely something that can be done. And then just scanning and data storage. It's whatever resources you have available to you. So if you have to get whatever small flatbed scanner to do it and then store it on an external hard drive. If you're a bigger institution, like we have network servers, that's where we store everything. So everything that you do just kind of depends on your budget and what you can do. There's just a lot of options out there. Again, Recollection Wisconsin will list all the different, they kind of have like a gold, silver, bronze levels of what you can do. They just try to push for you to do something. So whatever you can do within your means, that's what you should do. I think that's about it for digitization.
Can we go ahead? I'll start storage.
Sure.
Spec. Okay. So the next couple questions are regarding storage. Storage and access to historical materials, best practices for storage, storing and maintaining collections. I would go back and watch some of the videos, and we talk about specific things to, acid-free boxes or folders, cool, dry, dark is the best kind of storage. Of course, it's not always possible because you want people to access the materials that we're keeping for people to access. But I would, pick the type of material that you're interested in learning more about, and go back and rewatch the video. And you can send us questions at MPL Archives and Milwaukee.gov if you have something that we didn't cover. We may not have the answer. Sometimes we have to just Google stuff and figure out, like we had those weird acetate records. We had never had any in our collection, and we're like, how do we store these? How do we digitize these? And so it took a little bit of sleuthing to figure it out, but we're happy to share any information that we do have on something. And that's the key. You've got to, share, because there's all kinds of little strange types of stuff out there that you never quite realize was until you're sitting at the collection and someone gave you some. So, ask colleagues, ask us. We'll be happy to share any information we have. And then there's a question about could old snapshot photos, like from an instant camera, be placed in a protective sleeve that is heat sealed. The protective sleeve part, that's great. You want the polypropylene, which I mentioned several times in a lot of the videos, which is the archivally safe plastic. No heat sealing. That sounds like lamination. Keep heat and glue away from photos or documents you're trying to save. You always want to be able to undo the encapsulation. So if for some reason you had to take it out, or I don't know, for whatever reason, but that's the key about encapsulation, is that you can seal it up in there. It's still breathable. It's not airtight. And then you can snip off the end and remove the item if you want to. So you're not actually physically changing anything about the item. So no heat sealing, no, just get some plastic sleeves. You can get them from an office supply store, polypropylene, look for archivally safe, and you can absolutely put them in there, and that will help keep those photos. All right, go ahead, Bob. Let's take next section.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about just processing archival collections in general. The first question we got is, can you provide a template for creating a finding aid? So I'll put basically what I'll do.
I can pop them in there. Did you?
Yeah,
Oh,
I just did. Yeah.
He was better prepared than me.
Yeah, Lori has to put them in though officially, but
oh, okay.
So I would just put a couple of examples of our finding aids. So basically you can just take from that and just see the different levels of title, abstract, a little biography or history, contents list, just all the different fields that you can enter for a finding aid. Now, we also do create a catalog record for all our finding aids as well. So those go in our catalog. So we kind of have them in two different places. So those fields are pretty standard, I would say. I mean, I've seen different institutions finding aids and they might be in a different order, but as long as you have that general information there, I think that's what you want to shoot for. Next question, how do archivists go about preserving new items which might have historical value at a later date, and what items typically qualify? And this is just something that's very subjective to get a feel for it. It's kind of like we had another question in the general section about this, is just trying to know what kind of stuff is going to be relevant in the future. Yeah, it can be hard. And some stuff that you save now might, in 50 years from now, someone might say, oh, why'd they save this? And it get weeded. But you just have to try to get a feel for what you think is going to be. And it is hard to think. It's easier said than done to say, oh yeah, this is going to be great. Researchers are going to want to see this in 50 years. But it's just something you have to make the call for what you think is going to qualify to give that extra care and attention to process as an archival collection.
You just think of it like your regular library collection maintenance. I mean, you're buying books that you think people will be interested in, that you hope will cover topics, diverse voices. And, sometimes you'll get a book and nobody checks it out. And then sometimes you'll buy, 2 copies of one and everybody's checking it out. I mean, sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. It's the same kind of thing. And will you maybe miss something? Probably, but you just do the best you can. You can't collect everything. I mean, again, space is not infinite. So you just try to pay attention to the subjects that your patrons ask about. For us, I know when I do screening or weeding at City Hall, I look for things. Our patrons love property history, property record history, house history. So if I can get files or a collection or something from a department that keeps a lot of records on building histories or property histories or house histories, I will take them, and I will take sometimes several copies of things. But it also has to be it can't be too huge because we don't have the shelf space for everything. So just keep that in mind. It's just like any other collection maintenance.
For sure. Next question was, I am an MLIS student and would like to learn more about archives. Basically, I'm just going to put into the chat different organizations that will kind of give there's just a little more background on it. but particularly if you're a student, you can certainly just go to talk to someone, talk to a professor, and just say you want to learn more before you start taking classes. I mean, you could always take that Intro to Archives course, but if you didn't want to jump right into that, you could. I did the same thing. I talked to the professor and just got a feel for it, and then did actually take the intro course. But certainly there's plenty of resources that you could read about that'll just kind of start giving you that taste of what an archivist does and what's all involved through the day-to-day work of an archivist.
You're welcome to email us if you want to do a little volunteering in the archives and you're local to us. We can find some projects. Sometimes a lot of your local archival institutions, historical societies, they're always looking for people to help, and it may not be exactly, but at least you get a feel for documents, or if you're a student, what some of these materials might look like. Two of the links I think that put in there, there's one are actually linked back to like how to create finding aids and kind of explain some of the sections of finding aids. Going back to anyone asking about archival processing, like what is a scope and content note? What is a biohistorical note? What does that cover? Arrangement notes. So you can kind of pick through there. I know when helping to train some of my colleagues, I send them those, those kind of templates, and then I steal explanations from these sites like that try to explain it in maybe not so archivist-y lingo. Not that there's a lot of archivist lingo, but so that they can get a feel for what a scope and content note means, or what you're trying to explain in a biographical note in a finding aid, because it's not an essay. You're not a historian. You're not writing a biography about somebody, but there's certain kinds of things you should hit. It's much more business writing like, but those are some resources in there too that you can learn a little bit more about finding aids. And I do want to mention, like, if you go to conferences, like I think in one of the videos I mentioned MAC, the Midwest Archives Conference, the Wisconsin Local Historic Preservation Conference every year. Very often they have like workshops or courses on archives processing. So you can sign up for ones like that. I've seen them, they don't do it every year, but they do it fairly often to just get a feel. That conference is really invaluable for anyone who works in local history with, local history collections, archives collections. It can be really helpful. But so if you have questions about that, I would refer it. And the SAA, Society of American Archivists, they have information. They have, I think, even continuing education you can take. I mean, you can't get a whole certificate or, without going back to school, but you can get some general knowledge about processing, if that's something that you have in your local history collection. And some of them maybe mainly just be publications, and you may not have to process anything. So I think that's all out of that one, right, Bob?
Yeah, that's I have. I'm going to post the link to the Historic Preservation Conference.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I forgot, but I think that's in one of the other resources too.
Is it?
But, yeah, in the first resource list, there is a link to that. But yeah, post that up there. So our last group of questions was about working with other history-related organizations. Apparently, there's a few of you who are working with a historical society that you're trying to either partner with or something. Some of the questions were, we have questions about taking over from outside people who currently run historical society, working with local historical society to decide what's best location for collections, how to collaborate with local historical societies. This can all be very tricky because, you don't want to offend anybody. You're trying to partner with this, but sometimes it can be very tricky. What I would say is if you're somehow getting materials from them, probably the most important thing is to define whose materials are these. Are you sharing them? Are they donating them to you? Because ultimately, if they're going to live in your building and you're taking care of them, do you have the authority to weed them or process them, or I mean, we partner with a couple kind of historical or history organizations here, and it can be very tricky because you don't want to offend them. They're a huge supporter of the library. They're a huge supporter of local history, and they do lots of great programming. But who has the rights to handle the materials, or it can be very tricky. But I would definitely say, I mean, the best thing you can do to set yourself up is to basically, I think the best way is to have them donate the materials to you and have a deed of gift with paperwork, so that you have control of those materials to add to them, to weed them, to, if you're going to care for them and they live in your building. But of course, that doesn't always work like that. And sometimes that's okay too. But whatever partnership you decide on, it should be in writing. It should be official. Everyone should be aware of it, because in 10 or 20 years, if you're still partnering with that organization too, and people don't remember what you set up, because some of our partnerships have been going on for decades, and then nobody remembers what it was supposed to be. And then you're trying to, whose item is this? And if we're going to pay to get this fixed, then is it our item? Is it their item? Do we need to store it? Do they need to be storing it? How much space do you think they'll need? Because you have other things you're serving also. As a library, you're serving patrons and all other kind of topics, not just local history. So you don't, your organization doesn't revolve around just that. It's an important part. But for that little organization, that is what it revolves around. So, and they may have different aims or different goals. So you just have to be really clear. And I would set as much guidelines as you can, and be very open, and forthright about it too. So, and if you can't agree, and they don't want to give up control, and you don't really have, maybe it just doesn't work, or maybe the partnership is scaled back. So it's very tricky. So I don't want to say, there's all kinds of groups out there, and everybody has a different perspective on something. So, and we understand that well as, the library, because we're trying to serve a wide variety of perspectives. So you just have to be very mindful of it. And I mean, you're welcome to ask us if you have questions. We probably won't have a flat answer for you. It's really about whatever decisions you make, talk to your board, your library board, your administration, whoever, because they need to be on board too, so you can present a united front about something. This is what we envision. This is what we can offer these collections. What kind of access they'll have after. It's, you don't want to be unrealistic. I don't want to belabor this point because it's very, it's tricky. It's not, there's no easy answer. So I think that's all the questions we had before. Does anyone have any additional questions, or anything else they think we've missed or would like to talk about? And if you can't think of anything, that's fine. You can always, shoot us an email at mplarchives@milwaukee.gov, and we'll do the best we can. That's our public email too, so that's where we get a lot of questions from the public about setting up appointments for special collections. So it's fine to pass to your colleagues or even the public if they have questions about an archive collection. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. We've covered everything so perfectly that nobody has any questions. That's fine. So, I know we haven't, so because you never know, everybody is different. So in a lot of ways, archives and special collections are no different than just a regular library collection. I mean, there's some different ways to handle things, but it's just the same collection maintenance, and it's very similar. All right, well, if nobody has any questions, you can always check out our special collections page if you're interested in seeing some of the ways that we try to engage with the public on special collections. And some of our, we focus a lot on local history because that's basically what our archives and special collections are about. So you
Follow
can
us
see
on
things.
Instagram too.
Instagram, that's right.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what the address is. I think it's at MPL Special Collections or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So they do a lot of fun. We have a TikTok page too. Well, we don't have a TikTok page. The
yeah,
library has a
library.
TikTok page, but they do some fun things on TikTok if you're on TikTok. I have a personal TikTok account. I don't post anything, but I do like to lurk. I'm a good lurker. So, but social media is, it can be overwhelming, but it is a good way to reach out to people and to create awareness. So even if you dip your toe in there to a Facebook group or something, it does take a lot of work though, because, monitoring comments and all that kind of stuff. So it's really grown pretty big around here, but. All right, no questions. Well, it was great to have everybody here. And Lori, did you need to wrap up anything, or are we good?
So yeah, we just had one comment from a attendee. But the videos in the follow-up webinar were great, and we do appreciate they appreciate all the information you provided. So, and yeah, we do appreciate you sharing your knowledge and being willing to answer all of the questions that were submitted. So thank you for doing that. So again, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you. I'll send everybody an email so that you have that information. It's actually going to be posted also on the webpage where we have all those videos. So you can find everything there without having to go to different places. So it'll be there. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day and
stay warm.
Rest of the week. Stay warm. Right. It's already winter. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.